Hey, look, it's not a bad report card for Penn State football if your quarterbacks have an A and the special teams unit is your biggest problem.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, that is right. You are Locked On Nittany Lions, and thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I am Zach Seyko, your host of the show. Download the Gametime app and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. And it's report card time after two games. I felt it was appropriate. West Virginia, Delaware in the books, Penn State 2-0. And the quarterbacks get an A. The special teams are the lowest graded group out of everybody. But let's go through all of them in this episode. And starting with the quarterbacks, and then we'll make our way through the rest of the offense, the defense, and then get to the ones that come in last, the special teams unit. But for quarterbacks, Drew Allar and Beau Pribula have been nothing short of impressive. Okay, I will eat my words here. I thought that it would have been very beneficial for Penn State to go get a veteran quarterback out of the transfer portal, and James Franklin probably heard those criticisms, maybe not necessarily from me, but I don't think I was the only one that said that, hey, the depth chart seems to be a little bit lacking. You lost Christian Veillere. You got three young guys who have never really played. Hey, even with Drew Allar getting in last season, right? They didn't really have guys that played a whole lot of college football. And Drew Allar and Beau Pribula look very capable. Look, okay, the jury's still out on Jackson Smolik. He got in for a little bit of time against Delaware, but that's not enough to see. But that's good that they feel confident enough in him to say, hey, we can play you at the tail end of a game like this and still have the red shirt plans in the fold. They like Jackson Smolik a lot with the positive praise. But of course, the conversation is going to be tailored more around Drew Allar, who has just been he looks like a future number one overall pick. Okay. In an NFL scouts are going to want this guy when he's done after 2 years. He's not going to play more than that. Okay. Drew Allar, the way that he has been accurate, efficient, intelligent for a first-year starter, whether that's his own accord or picking up some pointers from Sean Clifford. He has really taken advantage of that opportunity to sit behind and learn because he's just playing mistake-free football. Look, I know that he almost had a couple near interceptions against West Virginia. One was tipped. One was, frankly, a bad pass and one that he shouldn't have made. But to go 21 of 29 against West Virginia, you have the Delaware game. No, you don't have as many touchdown passes, but to come out in the season opener, West Virginia sits back and says, we dare your sophomore quarterback who has never started a game to beat us. And well, Neil Brown and the Mountaineers, guess what? Drew Allar did beat you behind 325 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and 21 of 29 completions with no turnovers. More importantly, he's playing good football, no turnovers to this point for Mr. Allar. That's why quarterbacks get an A, okay? And then behind that, right, to go along with it, Beau Pribula he has his own system. He has his own playbook. He is going to run something completely different than when it is a Drew Allar-led offense, and I am okay with that, okay? Yes, he's still going to run elements of what Drew Allar does because it is Mike Yurcich's playbook at the end of the day. But still, the fact that Beau Pribula is comfortable in his own system, that he's working out of an individualized offense, and that the offense is tailored to him, so the wide receivers, the offensive line, the running backs all have to adjust to what Beau Pribula's skill set is. I mean, this takes a lot of practice, and for two young quarterbacks who have grown up so much without having Sean Clifford there anymore, they got to sit behind and learn. Sean Clifford is an intelligent football player. He's a smart mind, and whatever he passed along to them, now they had to take it and run with it, which they have, but quarterbacks get an A and nothing short of it. I'd even argue an A+ to this point. Drew Allar's been fantastic. Beau Pribula, if Allar, knock on wood, I'm not going to say, right? But if Allar weren't available, okay, or needed to take a play off, Beau Pribula could run the offense, and I would still not as confident with Drew Allar out there. But if Beau Pribula had to come in for an extended period of time in an important game, I would be okay with it. And that's pretty much, that's really saying something here about those two guys. They have impressed me. They've shattered expectations. I know it's West Virginia and Delaware. The true tests are coming up. Illinois, Iowa down the road. Michigan, Ohio State. We know that. And that's where they're really going to have to perform. So, but this point, the report card says after the first part of the season here that it's an A. Let's move to running backs, okay? And you have to give him an A because it's Nicholas Singleton and it's Kaytron Allen. Hey, look, Kaytron Allen, who would have thought that Allen would lead the team in rushing yards and that Singleton would be your goal line power back, right? It feels like they've reversed roles here. Kaytron Allen being the Thunder, Nicholas Singleton being the Lightning, but they A to this point as well. Okay. They're part of the reason the offense is so efficient. The defense, West Virginia had to you have to game plan for that. You have to respect that. And that's what they did. You pick your poison. You either challenge Drew Allar and you lose, or you challenge Nicholas Singleton, Kaytron Allen, and that offensive line and you lose. So really pick your poison. And when you go Singleton, I'm still waiting for those explosive plays. And I brought that up. I did a live post-game show, okay, after the Delaware game. And yes, he is lacking a little bit of those big plays, but defenses are respecting them a lot more. But Kaytron Allen has looked the better of the two in terms of overall rushing. Singleton 4 touchdowns inside the red zone. I mean, when you have 2 capable running backs like that, and let's throw in Trey Potts behind them, Tank Smith and Tyler Holtzworth are very good compliments at the back end of the depth chart. But I love that Trey Potts is there as running back number 3. When he came in against Delaware at the end of the game, like, it was just embarrassing, okay, the way that he was able to run, because that was lackluster competition, because we know that Trey Potts could start. It's just that you have 2 Heisman contenders and 2 future first-round picks in front of you. So the running backs get an A simply because of the pure talent, and they've done everything they have been asked to, and they haven't made any glaring mistakes. But you would like to see just a little bit. Allen's been impressive, okay? I think he's raised the bar and looks like he's closed that gap between him and Singleton. So Singleton, just looking for some of those explosive plays, the big runs, they will come. I know that for a fact. Wide receiver, I'm going to give him a B+. Okay. I've been a little disappointed, and it's not to be too hard on Dante Cephas, because you do transfer when you come in May, June, and you got to build some chemistry with a first-time starting quarterback. You come into a new offense. You're going from the MAC to the Big Ten, right? I just wanted to see a little more progress, but maybe I was asking too much. But Keandre Lambert-Smith going from solid play Dre, right, consistent play Dre to big play Dre. Keandre Lambert-Smith has become a serious big play threat. And Trey Wallace isn't just some compliment, okay? At Penn State, James Franklin was not kidding when he said that Trey Wallace was going to be able to basically switch positions with Keandre Lambert-Smith, that when they were going to run 2 wide receiver sets, that you don't know who the number 1, who the number 2 is on that given play. Wallace could be the X, Lambert-Smith could be the Z, or vice versa. So Trey Wallace to add and become more than just a little brother in the offense, right? It's not just, well, you got to respect KLS and just Trey Wallace is over there. No, both of those guys, the performances that they had, KLS getting over 100 yards and being the go-to guy against West Virginia, and then Trey Wallace not being quiet behind him, like, oh, he had an okay day, 3 receptions, 30 yards, right? He was all reliable. No, he was your go-to guy when you needed him. He's not just a second option. He's 1A, 1B with Keandre Lambert-Smith. And wide receivers get a B+ simply because I do want to see Malik McClain has stepped up in a big way. I want to see more out of Dante Cephas. I want to see more out of Liam Clifford. Those guys have been reliable. But if this group does want to move into an A category, you're going to need some, like James Franklin said, there are a lot of guys that can do a lot of things, but they need more than that. Okay. That's why he's only named them, Keandre Lambert-Smith and Trey Wallace, to this point, and he's just grouped everybody else who is going to emerge. So far, Malik McClain, that's good to see. And to go along with Trey Wallace, that route running, okay, his athleticism was already very impressive from what we've seen in the offseason from him, the way he can jump, okay, right, pure speed, but the route running and just the smart football awareness from Trey Wallace as a first, right, he rotated in a good amount last season, but as a true starter reps, Wallace has been nothing short of impressive, and that's why it's on the high end of the B range. Okay. And then tight ends, it's because I had lofty expectations for them. West Virginia's defense is not good against tight ends, but they really sold out to defend against Theo Johnson, Tyler Warren. Same Delaware, just they run a 3-3-5. you would feel that the middle, the front, right? They don't have a front seven. They have a front six. Okay. That the tight ends would be overutilized and they just haven't been. So I don't know if that has to do with scheme. I'll give them a C+ at this point. Okay. Just because I had lofty expectations for them. Tyler Warren dubbed as the best kept secret in college football by CBS Sports. And maybe, okay, it's still a secret that needs to come out about him in bigger games, but I'm still waiting. Did have the touchdown reception against Delaware. Theo Johnson, nowhere to be found offensively, but I think just because their responsibilities have been different, they've been reliable in the blocking game. I would say that Theo Johnson, a much better receiver than he is a blocker, and Tyler Warren and Theo Johnson have stepped up in that category. They're on the field at the same time. They're co-starters. They're pretty even at this point. So C+ just because I want to see them show up in the stat columns a little more. Maybe this grade is a little harsh. I get that, but they've just been background players to this point. And that's really all they've been. So it's just me wanting to see more and be those. I genuinely thought Theo Johnson could see 10 touchdowns this season. The season's still young. That's an average of 1 touchdown per game to this point. I thought he would be his favorite target, but Keandre Lambert-Smith has been that for Drew Allar. Still time will tell at this point. But in this episode of Locked On Nittany Lions, we are giving out player grades, positional grades to the groups. Offensive line is going to be coming up, and I got some pretty good grades for the trenches, offensive and defensive line. The linebackers, what do they get with the play of Tyler Elsdon? We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But first, let's hear from our sponsor of today's episode, and that is Gametime. You got to download the Gametime app if you want hassle-free. If you want to be hassle-free when you are buying tickets to your favorite events, this is a no-brainer. You download the Gametime app because buying tickets should not be stressful. Gametime is a fast and easy way to buy tickets to everything: sports, music, comedy, theater, you name it, anywhere near you. The Gametime app experience is great. The first part of it is the flash deals, the lightning deals. All you got to do is slide across on the app and you get extra savings on tickets to your favorite events. And then this is personally my favorite feature when I've used the app is being able to see where you're going to sit at a venue. Okay. You don't have to guess. You don't have to speculate. You can see your point of view from the event that you're going to. Gametime is the place to get those last second deals. So get exclusive flash deals on everything from football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account. Gametime app. Redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And the college football season is here. We all know that. It's so exciting to have it all back. And Locked On is stepping up the coverage. Locked On has introduced Locked On College Football Kickoff Live every Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time on every single Locked On College channel. And I'm going to be making a guest appearance on the show this Friday live at 11:15 a.m. Eastern Time. So be sure to check that one out. Locked On College Football Kickoff Live. We'll go over college football playoff implications, the conference rivalry games, and go in depth only like Locked On can with the insights and analysis from the hosts that we all have here at Locked On. So Locked On College Football Kickoff Live every Friday on every single YouTube channel for the college channels, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. You won't want to miss it. And of course, Locked On Nittany Lions is your go-to podcast for HappyValleyInsider.com. Check them out. Penn State rivals, HappyValleyInsider.com. All the latest news. And don't worry, we're going to be talking about recruiting here with Jalen Matthews decommitting from the Penn State class of 2025. That's going to be coming up in a future episode. But they had the break at HappyValleyInsider.com. They were the first to talk about that potential happening. Let's get back into it. Offensive line and defensive line. First, the offensive line. A B, and could be tailored into a B+ simply because Drew Allar Under pressure at times. I still want to see some guys dominate, but Penn State is experimenting with some things, and they did that against Delaware. Venga Ioane coming in and starting, JB Nelson. Very, very unfortunate news for Landon Tangwall. And again, I want to just express the best and wish him nothing but the best moving forward, because that's heartbreaking. But the offensive line has adjusted, okay? Everything marches forward. I hate to say that about this, but JB Nelson, Venga Ioane have done very well. Caden Wallace has improved. Sal Wormley has made a step up from the previous season. Hunter Norzad has settled in at center. And Penn State to have the flexibility to go up against a Delaware and say, all right, we're going to bench Olu Fashanu and Hunter Norzad because they played a lot of college football, especially Hunter Norzad. He's played a lot of college football. But Olu Fashanu, knowing about the injury history, right, you want to protect your biggest asset, protecting the blind side of Drew Allar or Beau Pribula, right? Protecting either of those quarterbacks, you need Olu Fashanu for 12 games plus, right? It is a long season. And to have that flexibility to bring guys in, Drew Shelton should not be on the bench, right? Okay, that's just how good Olu Fashanu and Caden Wallace are, because Drew Shelton would be starting anywhere else, okay? And then Javen Williams coming in against Delaware, playing meaningful snaps. Chimney Ono, Anthony Donka, though all those true freshmen are coming in and playing right away. I know it's in the fourth quarter against Delaware, but the fact that they're progressing to burn their red shirts really is telling, especially because Penn State's offensive line is going to see a serious makeover next year. You're going to lose Olu Fashanu. You're going to lose Hunter Norzad. You're going to lose Caden Wallace, right? Sal Wormley, I don't remember right now if he could come back or if he's got to go to the NFL. He was thinking about it last offseason. So that means you could lose about 4 starters on the offensive line. Then you have JB Nelson, Venga Ioane coming back. Your offensive line is going to look really different next year. So Penn State working on its depth right out of the gate. Kind of the same thing. I have high expectations for them. I would like to see them dominate and take over games because I know they're capable of it. But to this point, a B is a respectable grade. Defensive line, C+. Similar thing. For the defensive line and all the criticism that they've gotten, it's not warranted, okay? The defensive line is one of the better position groups on this team. They haven't exactly played like it. Zane Durant, to this point, has been your best playmaker. 6 tackles, a sack from that defensive tackle spot. Zane Durant was a breakout candidate, according to a lot of people. Was certainly on my list as an honorable mention. I had 5 other people ahead of him, but he probably would have been my 6th person if I extended my list to 10, 15, right? But Zane Durant, really impressive in the interior of the defensive line. The defensive ends, Chop Robinson is just a analytics monster, okay? He's an analytics monster. Even if he's not making the play, and that's what I want to see. I want to see him make more plays. But Chop Robinson, he affects the play. And the guys that, the analytics machine, the people that crunch the numbers, they watch the games, and it's even though he's not getting the sacks, even though he's not getting the tackles, first one in the backfield, running back's got to make a split decision and go away from Chop Robinson, and he runs into the teeth of the defense. That is what Chop Robinson is doing to this point, even though he's not wowing you with sacks and tackles for loss right away. We're still waiting for those big plays from Chop Robinson. They're going to come. I mean, Zariah Fisher. Let's talk about the other defensive ends. Adisa Isaac, been a little quiet, but the defensive ends in the rotation. Jameel Lyons, true freshman. Zariah Fisher coming back from that injury, the way that he was able to recover. And both those guys have a sack. So you felt a little worried when someone like Smith Vilbert was going to be available this season, and the other guys have stepped up. Amin Vanover's been missing time to this point. And defensive end, you haven't had to think about it. You hope that you can get Amin Vanover back because he's really good against the run. And you're going to face teams like Illinois and Michigan, Ohio State, who run the ball effectively, and you're going to need someone like him. But overall, just a little underwhelmed. I want to see Adisa Isaac, Chop Robinson, kind of like just take over a game. But they haven't had to be in that situation, right? West Virginia is a run-first team. Delaware is an FCS team, okay? They're not in positions late in the fourth quarter when it's a 3-point game, and you need your defensive ends to pin their ears back. Defensive interior, Zane Durant stepping up. So kind of like the tight ends, maybe this grade is a little harsh at C+, but I want to see more out of the defensive line because I'm not giving them slack. I'm really not. They were neutralized against West Virginia. They really, it was just flat out. And that's a good West Virginia offensive line. That is a top 15, maybe even a top 10 group. I'm serious. In the entire nation, West Virginia has a really good offensive line, but I want to see more out of the defensive line for Penn State. That's what it boils down to. For the linebackers, B-. Curtis Jacobs, right, has shown that he needs more respect. He should not be left off award lists. He is truly, NFL scouts get it right. Listen to the NFL scouts because they are paid to draft guys and make those decisions, or else they're on the chopping block if they get this wrong. When they say he's a top 5 linebacker prospect in next year's draft, I'm going to listen to them because they know what they're talking about. Not the journalists that don't watch enough Penn State football and say, well, Curtis Jacobs doesn't deserve to be on this list or whatever. Curtis Jacobs deserves a ton of respect. 10 tackles against West Virginia. 10 tackles against the Mountaineers, 1 sack to go along with it. Really quiet against Delaware. That's fine. But against West Virginia, to leave your mark in the opening season, especially when West Virginia just grounds and pounds, and you are around the football that many times to make that many stops. Curtis Jacobs has been by far the most impressive linebacker of the season. You have Dom DeLuca's pick 6, right? Understanding the coverage, running right into it. Abdul Carter, kind of the same criticism that I've said about whether it's Theo Johnson or just waiting for that next step. And it's still early in the season, right? You got 10 more regular season games, hopefully a Big Ten championship, hopefully a college football playoff. But Abdul Carter, avoiding suspension for what it's worth. Maybe that's a good thing here, but I'm waiting for those explosive plays. He does have 5 tackles and a sack through 1 game, has 2 quarterback hits, seems to be overrunning on some plays. Sometimes that athleticism, that speed, that aggression is maybe a little too much for Abdul Carter. So I'd actually like him to dial it back in at points. He knows what he's doing. I can't wait to see what happens in those bigger moments for him. But to this point, Abdul Carter, just some misfires on some plays, but it's okay. Kobe King really settling into his own, 5 tackles through the 2 games, really just better command of the defense, truly that starting Mike linebacker, taking that role away from Tyler Elsdon. Tyler Elsdon was the starter for a long time last season. Then they kind of split. They were a 1A, 1B, and now he is the guy. He is the Mike linebacker. And then, look, I'm not going to hammer Tyler Elsdon, but we've all seen it. Penn State fans have been upset with it. Okay, why they made a change last season to bring Abdul Carter in as the off-ball linebacker and then rotate Kobe King and everything, and then you had Curtis Jacobs move back over, was simply because of that Michigan game, okay? Tyler Elsdon wasn't getting it done against the run. He's just not overly athletic. He's an incredible, intelligent football player, understands the X's and O's, but that you're going to have to cheat to those spots. That's what it boils down to. The Penn State, I think of other Penn State linebackers in the past that didn't have all the athleticism in the world, but they still made the plays because they cheated to those spots. Think of a Jan Johnson who was really good at the end of his career and made it into the NFL. It's because he knew what to do. He knew how to give himself an advantage because what he lacked in speed, in agility. Just look, a college football player to make it to the NFL, right? You have to be fast as it is. But when you don't have that extra gear as Abdul Carter or Kobe King or Curtis Jacobs, you are going to make mistakes if you're out of position. So what he was able to do was cheat over to his spot and basically know those plays. So Tyler Elsdon's going to have to step that up. If I'm going to say that he's as smart of a football player as he is, then you're going to have to show it a little more, because on that play, when you give up that big touchdown to Delaware, of all teams, that didn't happen against West Virginia. That happened against Delaware. Okay. That was your responsibility on the backside. They ran a counter right to you, and the play just went by you. Okay. So he hesitated there. If he hadn't hesitated and made up with it with his intelligence, that play would have been stopped. So I think that Keon Wiley deserves some more opportunities. There is a reason that it's Kobe King, Tyler Elsdon, then Keon Wiley. I think you should consider, because Curtis Jacobs is positionless at linebacker, move Curtis Jacobs over to be that secondary Mike after Kobe King. And then Tony Rojas comes in as the on-ball linebacker, as the Sam, or even try Tony Rojas's hand at Mike linebacker as well. I think you have options. You need to light a fire under Tyler Elsdon. Make it known that his position as the 1B or even the 2 at this point is not safe, and that those guys are ready to step up at any given moment. So before we move on to the secondary, the secondary has been very, very impressive. I mean, I am going to break them up into cornerbacks, into safeties. But before we get to that, let's hear from another sponsor on today's episode, and that is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get ready for the NFL season. It's a long NFL season, but take advantage of this offer from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet that $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. How about that offer? Now's the best time to join FanDuel. The app is super easy to use, and you can bet on everything from the spreads, the money line, total, player props, you name it. You can bet it on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And right back to it on this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. The cornerbacks, we'll start with them before we go to the safeties, and then finish with a group that I don't hate to rip them apart, because they've been the least impressive of the group. And that's the special teams, and we'll save them for last. Cornerbacks get an A. Johnny Dixon and Kalen King, honestly, mirror images of each other. They are both locked down. I have no criticisms of their game to this point. West Virginia is not going to be the best passing attack they see. Same thing with Delaware, right? We're going to have to wait to really put them to the test, but they have passed to this point, right? Even if the test is easy, you still get an A, you still get a 100. Kalen King, Johnny Dixon, just shadow receivers wherever they go. But really what helps this group get an A at this point is the emergence of Cam Miller. Okay, Cam Miller leads the cornerbacks with 5 tackles, showing that he's got a knack for finding the football in the open field. Plus, he doesn't start. Okay, doesn't start, and he has 5 tackles. James Franklin has said that Cam Miller's parents should make more Cam Millers, right? So there's that funny off the cuff comment from Coach Franklin, but Cam Miller has been very impressive. And then the early emergence of the freshmen right out of the gate saying, hey, we're going to burn Tony Rojas's red shirt. We're also going to give the green light to Elliott Washington and Zion Tracy and King Mack. Those guys, all defensive back. King Mack, a safety coming in. Elliott Washington, same thing, a safety coming in. And those guys have moved to boundary corner, and King Mack coming over the slot. He is speedy as they come. Seeing highlights of him blitz after the quarterback, you are trusting a true freshman to do that. Okay, so those guys, and Zion Tracy getting to the fold. Lamont Payne, from talking to the other players, talking to guys like Jalen Reed, and they say that Lamont Payne isn't too far behind as well, so we could see him maybe getting some snaps very soon. But I was concerned about depth at cornerback, and Elliott Washington and King Mack and Zion Tracy, Cam Miller to lead the way, go along with it, make that a little bit better. It is a long season. Kalen King and Johnny Dixon, they stay on the field, then there's no issues here. But when they do have to come off for some snaps and those guys have to come in, I feel a little bit better about that. Let's move to safety. I'd a B+ teetering into an A-. Okay. Safety depth is great, right? That's part of the reason it can move into A-. But with what they've had to do to this point, because of the limited resources at cornerback, okay, you can't trust the freshman right out of the gate. And really, your 3 options at cornerback are Kalen King, Johnny Dixon. In a crunch time, right? It's Ohio State, it's a Michigan. Right? I'm just going to paint a picture. It's a 3-point game in the 4th quarter. You're not playing Zion Tracy against Marvin Harrison Jr. Okay, that's just the fact of the matter. Your options at cornerback are Kalen King, Johnny Dixon, and Cam Miller. Okay. So with 3 reliable cornerbacks to this point in time, the safeties have had to step up in man coverage. That means Jalen Reed, KJ Winston, Keaton Ellis, Zach Wheatley, all those guys have had to play and expand their roles rather than just kind of be off the ball, observe the eyes of the quarterback. And they still put those guys in comfortable situations, right? They don't make Zach Wheatley go up man-to-man against the #1 wide receiver. They're still saying, hey, play free safety, play center field, read the eyes of the quarterback, and do what you do best, okay? And Zach Wheatley has impressed me with the way he has 4 tackles to this point. So he's been finding the football, not just being that over-the-top safety. But Keaton Ellis forcing a turnover, forcing a fumble against Delaware. Jalen Reed, KJ Winston having to cover the slots. KJ Winston emerging as a starter on this defense. Jalen Reed recovering from his injury in the Rose Bowl. I mean, the safeties, I'll give them an A-, right? B+, I think, is not giving them enough credit because they've had to take on more responsibility since there aren't as many cornerbacks as you would like. Cornerbacks they're great. They get an A, but it's still, they don't have as many players as you would like them to in the rotation. So for the safeties to do that, they're playing spots in their spots that are comfortable, but they're also taking on a lot of responsibilities that would naturally be uncomfortable for safeties. Safeties are more players that are focused on stopping the run and playing in zone. And instead, they got to go up against man-to-man coverage against the slot. That is a difficult task for them, and they've handled it to this point. I'm eager to see how they do against better competition, better passing attacks, I should say. And then we finally made it to the special teams, folks. So this is where we are going to finish for special teams. D+, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And honestly, I might even, you could even argue that it's teetering onto an F, but it's definitely in the D range here. And why? You have no threat on, and I know it's early, so we're still waiting for it, but a kick return, punt return, that's fine. You're not giving up the football. You're returning it to the 20-25. You're getting 5 to 10 yards on punt return, but just no threat, like no big play threat. Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen, I'm still waiting for it at kick return. And I know at cornerback, right? I didn't specifically discuss the injuries. Okay. You're missing Daquan Hardy. I think Daquan Hardy is the starting punt returner, but Caden Saunders has had to step up, and good. He's not putting the football on the ground. He's not muffing any punts, but not a threat of a bit. I miss the days of Jahan Dotson and Parker Washington just fielding the punt and taking it a long way. And it feels like that was so long ago, even though it was just a few years back, but no threat on kick return or punt return. Then in limited action, Riley Thompson has been unimpressive to this point, punting the football. Okay. The offense has been good. They've been in a position where they haven't had to punt, but what happens when you face better defenses than you do and you got to flip the field? Okay. Those are really Penn State at punter, whether it was Blake Gillikin or Jordan Stout, they set the bar really high with flipping the fields like that. Did they solve the problem at place kicker? Does Penn State have an answer? Sanders Sahadak lost the job by halftime against West Virginia, and then Alex Falcons hasn't really made a meaningful kick. He hasn't had any high-pressure kicks. Congratulations, you're making all your PATs, but that should be anticipated as a Division I kicker. So kickoff seems to be the most stable for the special teams unit, with Gabe Wosu just nailing his touchbacks, okay? He looks like a defensive tackle, but he's really just a kickoff specialist, all right? So Gabe Wosu is really your best special teams player at this point. Everything else has either been unimpressive, lackluster, or a little concerning. And the everydayers know this. If you watch this show, you knew that my biggest concern coming into the season was special teams. And it was nothing. Yes, we had other things on the list, but my biggest concern was special teams, and they've disappointed at this point. So they've kind of fit the bill. So we'll see when it's a 3-point game or a single score game, how they're going to do it, how they're going to flip the field. Are they going to make mistakes, or are they going to step up? I hope it doesn't come down to a last second 45+ yard field goal, because I don't know. Okay. I don't know. You got to give the defense some breaks. You got to be able to flip the field. Kickoff, really good. I've liked that though so far with Gabe Wosu, but other than that, I don't know how else I feel about the special teams, but right on par here with the way we projected them here on Locked On Nittany Lions. So coming up, we're going to have an episode devoted to Penn State recruiting. Jalen Matthews decommits from the class of 2025. Not good news. And I'll tease it right now. It is NIL related. But with that being said, for more Penn State football content, become an everydayer right here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Subscribe on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a review. Leave comments about what you want to see included on upcoming episodes. And we'll talk to you again the next time here on Locked On Nittany Lions.